This is a very exciting part of the night so far in terms of what we know in the Senate. The big news, of course, is in Kentucky. Senator Mitch McConnell, the Republican there in Kentucky, has been reelected. In North Carolina right now, the Senate race there, NBC is calling it too close to call. In Georgia, that Senate race there, NBC is calling it too early to call. In Virginia, interestingly right now, NBC calling that race too early to call with about 19% of the expected vote in Virginia. But in terms of what voters are thinking about tonight, who's turning out and why, Tamron Hall's tracking our exit polls. She joins us now. Hi, Tamron.
Hey there, Rachel. In our exit poll, we've asked voters their opinions on a number of key social issues. First up, same-sex marriage. Let's take a look at what we've seen in these numbers right now. Of course, same-sex marriage is legal in 32 states and the District of Columbia. But look at 2014 here. 49% of voters say that same-sex marriage should be legalized in their state. That is up, by the way, 8 points from the past 4 years. But let's take a look at the jump amongst young voters here. This number is pretty interesting here. Under 30 crowd, 2010, 52%. Under 30 crowd, 2014, 66% say same-sex marriage should be legal. Turning now, though, to the legalization of marijuana, already passed in Colorado and Washington state, and on the ballot today in Oregon and in Alaska. In our survey, you see here, 49% believe that marijuana should be legalized, 47% saying it should not. On this, though, pretty divided when you look at the parties. Let's break it down here, and you will see 61% of Democrats say that marijuana should be legal. Looking over on the Republican side, 66% oppose such a move. And lastly, views have not shifted much when it comes to abortion in this country. In fact, 53% believe that abortion should be legal in most cases. 43% say it should be mostly or entirely illegal. So that's a glimpse of our exit poll when it comes to those key social issues I know you guys have been talking about in studio, Rachel.
That's fascinating. It's finally, looking at the pot numbers, you finally get a policy issue on which there is actually a clean partisan divide. Usually clean partisan divides are all culture and who you hate and who you love and what kind of music you listen to and all this other nonsense stuff. Finally, a policy issue on which we actually have a Democratic and Republican position. Chuck Todd is back with us now, as well as Andrea Mitchell, our friends from NBC News. Chuck, looking at North Carolina and Virginia, in particular in these Senate races, just looking at the latest numbers as they come in, both Georgia and North Carolina. Georgia too early, North Carolina too close. What do we know there?
Well, we got a little more exit data in, we've got a little more modeling data in, and it looks a little bit better for Hagan. It looks like perhaps the initial exit poll showed 21% African-American, that the electorate was 21% African-American. It looks like it's going to be a little bit higher than that. Anything higher than that, that is good for her. Plus, you start looking at some of the county-by-county data, and again, Hagan looks, it's still too close to call. You can't say anything, but it's sort of pinky on the scale for her.
Okay.
And then quickly on Virginia, we're watching all that come in. The models are starting to show, as we're watching the raw data come in, the models are starting to show Warner's the favorite here. Warner's still the favorite. We called him the favorite. Clearly, things tightened up. But, you know, our models indicate that this Warner should, depending on, unless there's a collapse in Northern Virginia, he should be fine at the end of the day.
About 20% of that vote in. Still too early to call in Virginia, the official call at this point.
That's a really interesting race, as we were saying, because you've got two very prominent people in the party, and Ed Gillespie, so well known as Republican chair, as a George W. Bush aide.
He ran out of money. He ran out of money and he made that close. I think it really does tell you, though, a little bit of a depressed Democratic turnout in Virginia.
Maybe in part because they thought it was cooked.
Correct. Yeah. That happens sometimes.
I think it'll beat the spread. Gillespie, and he'll go on to run for governor and catch up with his friend McCollum.
I think a guy named Mark Warner pulled that same trick in 1996.
That's what you do. You run once.
Wasn't so bad for him.
Once for range, once for effect. Anyway, when we come back, polls will be closed in some key states coming up in a couple minutes now, including two big governor's races, the race in Florida between Rick Scott and Charlie Crist, plus a race that could make history in my home state of Pennsylvania. We may have the first governor in history bumped out of office, and that's going to be big news when our coverage continues.